History books sell you a sanitized lie of noble kings and majestic battles. That's a scam. The past was run by chaotic, deeply flawed decision makers, covering up a magnificent circus of stupidity. A dead crowned queen, an accidental triple invasion, a war decided by soup. Brace yourself for the official chronicle of Europe's most humiliating failures. 1. A paranoid communist dictator bankrupted his nation to construct 173,000 indestructible concrete bunkers against an invasion that never arrived. The regime planted thick military pillboxes across peaceful beaches, public parks, and tiny children's playgrounds like gray brutalist mushrooms. Soldiers spent agonizing decades scanning the horizon to fight phantom enemies on a staggering scale while the treasury bled dry. He morphed into a geopolitical doomsday prepper, blowing his life savings on toilet paper, canned beans, and an underground vault, only to realize the apocalypse was permanently canceled. The invisible threat never materialized. The citizens just inherited a surreal landscape of useless military waste sticking out of the dirt. Talk about buyer's remorse. 2. Finland officially recognizes drinking alone at home in your underwear as a legitimate government-endorsed form of self-care. While other nations brag about economic productivity or poetic coziness, the Finnish government minted a national emoji for getting drunk with zero pants and zero plans. Citizens lock their doors, strip down to their unmentionables, grab a cheap beer, and stare at the wall. They turned weekend antisocial depression into a competitive Olympic sport, sprinting effortlessly toward the gold medal for introverted bliss. You don't need small talk. Nobody expects a polite conversation. You just sit there in your socks, letting the cold darkness outside fade away while you embrace the ultimate solo hibernation. Are you secretly a Finnish cultural ambassador? 3. The justice system basically says that if you can magically stroll out of a secure facility without breaking a lock, punching a guard, or causing a riot, good for you. German law states that breaking out of prison isn't penalized because seeking freedom is a biological human instinct. Inmates who slip through an open gate don't face extra time on their sentence. They treat the penitentiary as a toxic corporate job where quitting doesn't ruin your resume, provided you refrain from stealing the office printer on your way out the door. The authorities respect your urge to run away. If they catch you, they just drag you back to your cell with a disappointed sigh. The state punishes the crime, but they don't punish the primal desire to breathe fresh air. Just walk away. 4. The hyper-precise Swiss military accidentally invaded their tiny, armyless neighbor Liechtenstein 3 separate times. 171 heavily armed soldiers got lost in the dark woods and marched straight into a foreign sovereign country. The invaded nation didn't even notice the breach until Switzerland called the next morning to awkwardly apologize for the geographical blunder. These disciplined troops morphed into a drunk neighbor, clumsily stumbling into your living room at midnight, knocking over a lamp and leaving a sheepish voicemail the next day. There were no shots fired, no hostages taken, and no dramatic territorial disputes. Just a bunch of guys holding assault rifles, staring at street signs, and wondering why the roads suddenly looked unfamiliar. Is the Swiss Army using Apple Maps? 5. A 17th century Belarusian scholar proposed creating a serious academic university department dedicated exclusively to the science of comedy. Amidst thick theological texts and complex astronomical studies, this visionary wanted to officially institutionalize humor as a hardcore academic discipline for the elite. He envisioned professors dissecting punchlines, analyzing comedic timing, and grading students on their ability to deliver a flawless joke under pressure. He transformed elite education into modern Harvard, dropping its prestigious law program to offer a doctorate in internet memes and stand-up heckling. The royal court dismissed the idea, choosing boring traditional subjects instead of refining laughter for the ruling class. We lost a golden era of formally educated jesters. Comedy is serious. 6. Portugal passed an actual law making it illegal to pee in the ocean to maintain public hygiene. I'm not making this up. It leaves confused tourists wondering if there are undercover scuba cops lurking in the kelp, waiting to slap handcuffs on anyone relieving themselves in the waves. The government drafted the ultimate unenforceable terms of service agreement, applying a rigid legal boundary to an infinite, chaotic body of water. How do you gather forensic evidence in a swirling tide? Do they deploy drones to monitor suspicious warm spots in the Atlantic? The legislation exists as a symbolic finger wag against poor manners, relying solely on the honor system of thousands of sunburned beachgoers who won't bother walking back to the public restrooms. The vast ocean keeps its secrets. Hold it in. 7. The Polish army in World War II drafted a Syrian brown bear, promoted him to corporal, and had him carry artillery shells in combat. Picture a giant apex predator hauling heavy wooden crates of live explosives through a blistering war zone without dropping a single one. He didn't demand shiny medals, better food rations, or a premium subscription to a VPN. The unit turned a ferocious grizzly beast into an elite Amazon warehouse worker, and he ended up becoming the undisputed employee of the month. After surviving the brutal front lines, he gracefully retired to a civilian zoo where his former trench buddies visited to toss him lit cigarettes. He chugged beer, wrestled tired soldiers for fun, and maintained flawless military discipline under relentless enemy fire. Could a bear outrank you? 8. Until 2013, the global fashion capital of Paris possessed a legally binding ordinance criminalizing women for wearing pants without police permission. For over 2 centuries, every modern woman strutting down the elegant Parisian boulevards in simple denim was technically a hardened, fashion-forward criminal, successfully evading the law. Authorities maintained a dusty, bureaucratic zombie that stubbornly refused to die. The city morphed into a bustling tech capital, enforcing a law that makes using Wi-Fi an act of treason. Officers ignored the ridiculous mandate for decades, but the text remained permanently carved into the municipal code. You could buy expensive haute couture trousers in luxury boutiques, then instantly break the law by putting them on. Denim is dangerous. 9. A bitter 14th century Catholic Church dispute resulted in 3 different men claiming to be the sole pope, prompting them to furiously excommunicate each other. A frantic council tried to solve the crisis by firing the 2 stubborn rivals and hiring a fresh replacement. The first 2 guys flat out refused to leave their holy thrones, creating a magnificent divine Mexican standoff where everyone fired everyone else. They transformed the Holy Seat into the ultimate corporate meltdown, where 3 rival CEOs terminate each other simultaneously, leaving the whole company confused about who signs the checks. Priests didn't know which boss held the keys to heaven. The European monarchs picked sides based on politics, funding a chaotic spiritual war of paperwork. Check your paychecks. 10. In 1839, a freak hurricane battered Ireland so violently that the deeply religious population genuinely believed Judgment Day had finally arrived. The demonic wind physically blasted fish out of the rivers, flattened stone buildings, and roared like a screaming invisible army storming the coast. An entire terrified nation hid under their beds, convinced the world was collapsing into dust. The sky turned Mother Nature into a malicious prankster, pulling an apocalyptic joke on a superstitious population, just to abruptly hit the brakes the next morning, as if nothing ever happened. Dawn broke, the sun shined, and bewildered farmers crawled out of the wreckage to find their livestock stuck in trees. A biblical end of the world turned out to be just bad weather. Did Mother Nature try deleting Ireland? 11. The premier gambling hub of the world forbids the actual citizens of Monaco from placing a single bet inside the famous Monte Carlo casino. The royals engineered this luxurious building specifically as a glittering financial trap to bankrupt rich tourists while keeping locals locked safely outside to count the incoming cash. The principality runs the ultimate global cartel rule. You manufacture the shiny product, sell it to wealthy addicts flying in on helicopters, but you never consume your own supply. The state protects its own people's bank accounts while happily draining the wallets of foreign billionaires. Guards check passports at the velvet ropes, ensuring no domestic resident ruins their life at the glamorous roulette table. It is a masterpiece of cynical economics. House always wins. 12. Hungarian men celebrate Easter morning by ambush dousing the women in their lives with buckets of cold water or cheap perfume in a bizarre fertility ritual. Guys burst into homes, recite a funny rhyming poem, and immediately launch a vicious splash attack on their female friends. Instead of getting slapped, they demand painted eggs and strong brandy as a reward for soaking them to the bone. The holiday turns into state-sanctioned, festive bullying disguised as a cheerful compliment to your health. They normalized a chaotic frat party prank and got the local grandmas to endorse it. Women spend hours getting dressed up for the holiday just to get violently hosed down in the living room by their smiling neighbors. The whole country accepts this liquid assault as perfectly normal behavior. Stay dry. 13. A grieving 14th century Portuguese king exhumed his murdered lover's rotting corpse, crowned her, and forced his treacherous nobles to kiss her skeletal hand. Think about that for a second. The monarch executed the ultimate macabre power move, dressing a decomposing body in fine royal silk and making the very people who probably conspired against her bow down in sheer terror. He morphed a tragic romance into the most extreme, terrifyingly literal version of making your ex jealous, mixed smoothly with a gothic horror HR meeting. Trembling courtiers had to kneel before a literal pile of bones, sitting on the ornate throne, swearing blind loyalty to a ghost. The king didn't just demand political respect, he shattered their psychological sanity to prove a bloody point. Would you kiss a skeleton for work? 14. Luxembourg looked at the escalating maintenance costs for its entire fleet of 2 military aircraft and just decided to sell them to a private company. Instead of posturing for global military dominance, the sensible government essentially held a national garage sale, dissolving their nation's combat air power overnight to save a few extra bucks. The defense minister transformed into a frugal guy, realizing his sports car insurance is way too high, so he sells the vehicle and decides taking the public bus is a superior defense strategy. They outsourced their aerial protection to friendly neighbors because fixing jet engines ruined the annual budget. The airspace was left unguarded just to keep the government accounting spreadsheets looking clean, green, and profitable. War is expensive. Buses are cheaper. 15. The European vampire craze didn't start as a spooky myth. It began as meticulously documented bureaucratic reports by Austrian military surgeons in 18th century Serbia. Government officials were literally digging up fresh graves, pressing wax stamps onto formal reports of undecayed corpses, and sparking a massive medical panic about the undead. They acted as the modern CDC, issuing an official pandemic warning for flesh-eating zombies, giving a cheap campfire ghost story the clinical backing of military science. Doctors measured fingernail growth on corpses and blamed diseases on blood-sucking demons. They dragged folklore out of the dark woods and dropped it right onto the desks of high-ranking generals. Rational science legitimized a nightmare. Paperwork creates monsters. 16. In a freezing Norwegian Arctic town, the local government made it illegal to die because the permafrost prevents buried bodies from decomposing, preserving deadly viruses. You aren't banned from death to achieve some magical immortality. You're forcibly deported to the mainland the second you get terminally ill. They refuse to let your frozen corpse trigger a devastating retro-pandemic. The mayor hands you an extreme eviction notice where the landlord kicks you out, not for missing rent, but for trying to permanently expire on the pristine property. If you catch a fatal disease, you have to pack your bags and catch a flight south before your heart stops beating. The graveyard stopped accepting new tenants decades ago to protect the terrified living. Is outlawing death the ultimate flex? 17. A tense naval conflict between the Dutch and the Austrian Empire ended instantly when a single flying iron cannonball miraculously destroyed the Austrians' hot soup kettle. The Dutch fired one precise shot that exploded on the deck, showering the bewildered enemy sailors in their own delicious lunch. The Austrian crew surrendered the ship simply out of psychological shock and sudden, overwhelming hunger. The gunner pulled off the military equivalent of a skilled sniper shooting the ceramic coffee cup right out of your boss's hand on a gloomy Monday morning. The combat morale instantly evaporated into thin air. Men who were ready to die for their majestic empire gave up the fight because they lost their afternoon meal. You can't wage a serious war on an empty stomach. Lunch is ruined. 18. The tiny mountain microstate of Andorra officially declared war on Germany during World War I, but was forgotten in the peace treaty, remaining legally at war until 1958. An armyless nation was technically engaged in a brutal global conflict for decades just because some exhausted bureaucratic clerk forgot to type their name on a critical piece of paper. The government acted as a furious guy leaving a toxic group chat, only to realize 40 years later that nobody ever actually revoked his admin privileges. While the rest of the planet rebuilt ruined cities and moved on to the next disaster, this silent valley maintained a ghost war. They stood strong against a giant empire without firing a single bullet or deploying a single soldier. Did Andorra wage the longest war? 19. The bustling capital of Iceland banned all dogs for 60 agonizing years to prevent the spread of a deadly parasitic tapeworm. An entire modern European city was silent of barking for generations, treating man's best friend like a criminalized, disease-carrying piece of contraband. Police officers patrolled the snowy streets looking for rogue puppies instead of street thugs. The municipal code manifested a literal cat person's paradise, orchestrated not by personal pet preference but by raw biological terror. If you wanted a loyal companion, you had to settle for a feline or face severe fines from the health department. The government successfully eradicated the parasite, but they broke the hearts of thousands of local dog lovers in the process. The streets belonged to the felines. Cats won. 20. The legendary fantasy character who flew on cannonballs was a real German aristocrat who hated that his exaggerated dinner party stories were published. A retired military guy was just trying to brag over a few cold drinks at the tavern, but a sneaky writer stole his lies, published them globally, and branded him history's greatest liar forever. He transformed into the 18th century equivalent of telling a fake story on a popular podcast and going so viral that your actual family name becomes a literal psychiatric disorder. The poor nobleman spent the rest of his miserable life threatening publishers and trying to clear his ruined reputation. He wanted to be remembered as a brave cavalry officer, but the printing press trapped him inside a cartoonish joke. Don't brag, silence is golden. 21. A rural Spanish village cleanses original sin by laying innocent newborns in the middle of the street and having grown men dressed as yellow devils physically hurtle over them. Parents willingly place their precious sleeping infants on soft mattresses on the hard concrete, while masked locals perform extreme parkour right over their fragile heads to absorb evil spirits. The church created a wild ritual combining a holy baptism with a reckless extreme sports montage sponsored by Red Bull, minus any protective safety nets. The hurdlers sprint down the avenue, leaping blindly over rows of babies as the crowd cheers in terrifying suspense. One bad landing ruins a family forever, but tradition demands the airborne exorcism continues without hesitation. Would you let strangers jump your baby? 22. When the powerful Ottoman Sultan demanded their immediate surrender, Ukrainian Cossacks responded with a legendary diplomatic letter, constructed from creative, filthy insults. Instead of drafting a boring peace treaty, a group of bearded warriors sat around a wooden table brainstorming absurd titles like Babylonian Scullion to aggressively troll the most powerful military leader on Earth. They unleashed the ultimate 17th century internet troll response, replying to a serious legal threat with a meticulously crafted string of unprintable slurs. They didn't rely on swords, shields, or a premium subscription to a VPN. They just verbally destroyed an emperor's fragile ego using dirty jokes. The Sultan threatened annihilation, and they essentially replied with a crude sketch. Trolls win wars. 23. An ancient Roman empress solved a venomous snake infestation on Cyprus by shipping in thousands of cats to act as a ruthless biological strike force. The beautiful island was basically handed over to a feral army of imported felines who systematically slaughtered the slithering reptiles, leaving a massive cat population that rules the sun-baked streets to this very day. The royal decree worked as unleashing the modern Avengers, but instead of noble superheroes, she deployed a chaotic horde of stray cats motivated solely by murder and fresh meat. The furry assassins wiped out the venomous threat, multiplied rapidly, and claimed the territory as their own rightful prize. Humans just pay the rent now. The cats hold the true power. Did cats literally conquer an entire island? 24. An 18th century English woman convinced the nation's most brilliant doctors, including the king's personal surgeon, that she was giving birth to actual rabbits. Educated medical professionals stared in sheer bewilderment as she secretly smuggled dead animal parts inside herself, tricking the elite scientific establishment with a grotesque physical magic trick. She manipulated these arrogant geniuses the same way a scammer tricks top Silicon Valley billionaires into investing millions into a time machine that is just a cardboard box with future scribbled on the side. The surgeons wrote extensive academic papers documenting the miraculous furry phenomenon, destroying their own prestigious careers in the process. A simple peasant exposed the blinding arrogance of royal medicine. Doctors were fooled. 25. A paranoid Swedish king tried to scientifically prove coffee was lethal by forcing a death row prisoner to drink it daily, while the control subject drank tea. The monarch hated espresso so much that he orchestrated a lifelong state-sponsored medical trial just to validate his bias. The bizarre experiment became a chaotic scientific fail, where the arrogant researcher trips over his own inflated ego, and the caffeinated lab rat ends up dancing on everyone's graves. Both supervising doctors died of old age first. Then the stubborn king was tragically assassinated. The coffee-drinking criminal outlived the entire royal administration, sipping his dark roast long into his peaceful golden years. The state wasted decades trying to criminalize a basic breakfast beverage. Caffeine always wins. 26. During the brutal American Civil War, President Abraham Lincoln became an official honorary citizen of San Marino after the tiny republic sent him a polite fan letter. A giant global superpower tearing itself apart in bloody combat took a bizarre timeout to exchange heartfelt diplomatic pen pal letters with a European microstate the size of a suburban neighborhood. The president behaved as a stressed CEO in the middle of a hostile corporate takeover, hitting pause to graciously accept a plastic trophy from a local children's lemonade stand. Lincoln proudly wrote back, praising their secure borders and peaceful governance, while his own country burned to the ground. This microscopic alliance offered zero military troops, but provided a much-needed psychological boost for a weary leader. Priorities are weird. 27. The stylish and serious city of Milan once enforced a municipal legal ordinance that ruthlessly fined innocent citizens for frowning in public spaces. Unless you were actively crying at a depressing funeral or bleeding out in a hospital ward, the local frown police could legally rob your wallet for not looking cheerful enough on a rainy Tuesday. The city council transformed the code into the legal embodiment of a creepy guy telling a tired woman on the subway to smile more, but backed by the full financial power of the state. You had to paste a terrifying, fake grin on your face just to buy groceries without facing judicial bankruptcy. The aesthetic capital demanded positive vibes at gunpoint, turning daily life into a deeply uncomfortable theatrical performance. Can the government force you to smile? 28. A single stolen bovine in 13th century Belgium triggered a cascading feudal conflict that burned down dozens of villages and slaughtered 15,000 people. Instead of just paying a minor administrative fine for swiping livestock, proud noble lords escalated the ridiculous drama until entire thriving regions were permanently wiped off the map over a hamburger. They launched the historical equivalent of starting a nuclear World War III because someone stole your labeled turkey sandwich out of the communal office fridge and stubbornly refused to apologize. Armies marched across the countryside, destroying families and burning castles, all because two arrogant guys couldn't negotiate the price of a farm animal. The cow probably died of old age while humans butchered each other. Ego kills everyone. 29. Finland transformed a dark folklore legend of a local forest bandit, stealing women into a globally competitive athletic sport, where men race through treacherous obstacles carrying their wives. Grown, sweating athletes sprint frantically through freezing water pits and deep sand, with human beings strapped upside down to their backs, all to win the wife's exact physical weight in cheap beer. The bizarre event morphs into a massive HR nightmare of a CrossFit competition where the heavy iron kettlebell is a screaming spouse, and the post-workout protein shake is literally alcohol. Competitors risk spinal injuries and public humiliation just to secure a weekend supply of booze. It requires immense core strength, blinding trust, and a spectacular disregard for modern marital safety standards. Romance is heavy. 30. Liechtenstein sent exactly 80 soldiers to the Austro-Prussian War, saw zero combat, and returned home with 81 men after making a new friend on the trail. An armed military force marched into a bloody, chaotic continental conflict, did nothing but hike through the scenic mountains, and came back with a souvenir Italian officer who just thought they were cool guys. They pulled off the glorious equivalent of gearing up for a violent street gang fight, sitting peacefully at the pub the whole time, and adopting a happy stray dog on the walk home. The troop experienced negative casualties. While surrounding empires suffered thousands of horrific deaths, these guys essentially went on a subsidized camping trip and gained a foreign exchange student. Peace is a very profitable business. Friendship wins wars. 31. A Bohemian residential neighborhood in Lithuania successfully declared itself an independent republic, boasting a standing army of 12 people and a constitution specifically protecting dogs. Local artists playfully mimicked serious statehood, drafting official legal rights dictating that everyone possesses the fundamental right to be unhappy. They operate as a surreal, living parody of a modern European nation. The Enclave functions as a chaotic homeowners association run by hipster painters on acid, creating strict municipal laws based solely on chill vibes rather than property values. They celebrate their Independence Day by pouring free beer out of the main public fountain. They don't collect property taxes or build missile silos. They just legally mandate personal freedom and feline independence. Vibes are law. 32. To chase away lingering evil spirits on New Year's Eve, rural Moldovans don gigantic, heavy real bearskins and violently dance through the frozen streets. Instead of sipping expensive champagne in a quiet living room, you open your front door to a loud primal drum circle of towering, terrifying dead animals, demanding a prosperous new year. The wild celebration acts as a furry convention possessed by ancient pagan demons, actively ensuring your future financial success through the raw power of rhythmic terror. Sweating dancers carry the crushing weight of the pelts, stomping the freezing pavement to intimidate the ghosts of the past. The whole community relies on scary wildlife costumes to bring them good luck. You can't start January until the bear finishes dancing on your porch. Happy New Year! Let me stop right here. I thought we finally hit the bottom of the historical barrel. I assumed nobody could possibly outstupid a bloody medieval war over a stolen cow, or a disturbed monarch pinning a crown onto a rotting skeleton. Zit. Wait, hold on a second. I'm looking at the script and we missed something. We skipped past the undisputed apex predator of historical audacity. All these kings and dictators relied on paranoid concrete bunkers, feral cats, or screaming bears to enforce their ridiculous wills. But the ultimate winner didn't fire a single cannon or draft a single unhinged law. The gold medal belongs to a guy who hacked basic social etiquette to steal an entire military fortress. Are you ready to see how the greatest military mind conquered an island just by asking nicely? 33. Napoleon bypassed Malta's impenetrable defenses by abusing the knight's hospitality. He politely asked to dock his fleet for water, walked inside, and instantly betrayed them. History isn't a chess match, it's a social engineering scam. Wars are won by exploiting politeness. The timeline is broken, but we know there's more unhinged insanity out there. Drop fact 34 in the comments right now. Name the biggest historical idiot or the most absurd law from your country. The best comment gets pinned in our next breakdown. Destroy the like button and subscribe.